Hey, welcome. Today we are going to do another interview for political candidates for the 2022 election. And this time we are going to Arizona, and specifically Arizona Legislative District 1. And today we have Quang Nguyen, who is the incumbent of LD1 in the state of Arizona. And good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Dennis. It's good to see you again.
Oh, thank you, my friend. And let's just start right in. For people that aren't familiar, could you describe your office, your district that you are running for?
Again, my name is Quang Nguyen, and I currently represent Legislative District 1 in Arizona, and that is all of Yavapai County and a tiny little chunk of Coconino County where Eastern Sedona is at. So we cover from Ash Fork all the way down to Black Canyon City, and the central area is Prescott Valley, Dewey, Humboldt, Chino, and so on. So we got about 8,300 square miles and maybe 240,000 in population. And so I was elected back in November of 2020, started serving in my first term, Jan 21 until now.
Oh, there you go. Well, so
and as a Republican.
well, yes, there you go.
That's
Yeah.
important.
Yes. In the first now, let's talk legislative record here for the first bit of it. You've been quite the active legislator in the state of Arizona in the last couple of years, and have won a number of accolades as part of your term. Just right off the bat, now, in 2021, I believe you were the legislator of the year by the National Shooting Sports Foundation.
Yes, and here's the disclaimer. You and I are both shooters, and we both belong to the Arizona State Rifle and Pistol Association, where I'm the president of. And when I went down, Dennis, when I went down to decide to run for office, the Second Amendment was my top priority. So I came down, but I wasn't a one-issue person. I branched out and started doing a lot of religious freedom, a lot of civics education, and so on. But what I did in my first year was to make sure that the industry is protected. And so I amended a Senate bill to make sure that the industry is not being sued when a firearm is misused or illegally used, in committing a crime. So when I got that done, I mean, literally, I put my name on the line. To me, everyone can talk about supporting the Second Amendment, but very few of us actually go to the front line and say, you know what, I'm going to put my name out. I'm going to do everything I can, because it is an important part of the Constitution. And so after I got that done, the National Sports Shooting Foundation gave me the Legislator of the Year nationally, and very proud to be to have that award on my desk.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that is an important piece of legislation, and sets a standard that very clearly plays into the national debate on the Second Amendment. Now, the other thing in your legislative record that you've been fighting for very recently in terms of civic education is the civic education with regards to the information that is delivered to students in the state of Arizona having to do with communism. And tell me a little bit about that, because your history with that goes all the way back to the fall of Vietnam in 1975.
Right. And that piece of legislation, if there's one piece that I want to be remembered for, that would be the one. That's House Bill 2008. And I sponsor that legislation, and it was co-sponsored by the current majority leader, Ben Toma, who actually escaped from communist Romania as a little child. So we have two survivors sponsoring HB 2008. And what it does is it requires that the State Board of Education in Arizona to develop curriculum as well as an oral history library of survivors to teach the unkind things that communists do to people. So it's basically it's the evil of communism. And amazingly, Dennis, I don't know if you know, but it was taught in Arizona back in the 50s. But somehow we become more and more friendly to socialism and communism. And so eventually that kind of information just stopped getting to the young students. So I'm very proud of that.
Well, it's kind of interesting in that when I saw that legislation, I was impressed by it because the way that it basically restores a balance of debate into the entire process, which you has not been something that you see either in primary education or even in college educations until you get to the very theoretical level in like graduate and postgraduate stuff. But to restore that back to the point that people in their K through 12 are seeing that there is it's important to look at this from an objective perspective and see the raw truth of how things are going is very, I thought that was a very interesting thing in terms of stuff that you were doing, and the fact that you're doing it in a legislative sense as opposed to an advocacy, pure advocacy from the outside is a very interesting aspect to this whole debate. So,
Yeah, Dennis, to make sure people understand that this is not indoctrinating people to hate a particular system. More so, this is a comparative study between systems from the other countries, such as the former or Vietnam, under communism, in opposed to say the capitalistic society that we have here, successful system that we have here in the United States. So it is a comparative study. So we're not just trying to push one ideology over the other, but me coming from coming from the fall of Saigon, there's a whole lot of history. I was born before the war, and I actually endured and survived the entire war until the very end. So I have a little bit of knowledge in terms of the evils of communism, and you'll hear from Majority Leader Ben Toma as well when this is all said and done. And I think this is important.
yeah, well, I mean, certainly having that kind of perspective, particularly in times today, you see the turmoil going on in Europe, surrounding Ukraine and places like that, and so these debates are very much alive. And
Right.
you're when I read the points of what was in your legislation, I was very, very impressed by the fact that what you're really doing is equipping the people, the young people of the United States with the tools to think critically in the future, which is, I think, is a very, very important thing for the United States to have as a culture.
Right. And I remember, let me paraphrase a comment that I read from one of the students that took the course back in the 50s. And he came out, and again, I'm paraphrasing, and it is on the record somewhere. He said, I used to hate communism until I took the class. I realized that now I have reasons to hate it. I mean, knowledge is power, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. It is. And having your eyes open to see things critically is the ultimate power when it comes to figuring out what the strategy is for yourself and for your country. So, I wanted to touch on like a couple of highlights of what you've done from a legislative standpoint, basically because you've been very, very active in terms of what you've done in office. And so let me ask you the core motivation, like, and I asked this of everybody that I interviewed, and he's like, why are you doing this? Taking time out of your world to become a legislator and participate in this process. What's the motivation behind Quang and why he wants to serve?
When I came to this country, I mean, look at the life I have now. It was given to me by sweat and blood of all those Americans that fought in Vietnam side by side with my family for nearly 20 years. And what's the best way for me to give back and sincerely giving back? And so I pondered the idea for years, but the kids were little, and finally, when the kids grew up and left the home, I felt that it was the right time. And it's I always go back to going along with God's plan, right? Don't fight it. And so when I had an opportunity, when I was asked to run for office, I immediately accepted it and didn't know if I would be able to win. So I just put myself out there, have a platform, stick to the platform, be consistent. And fortunately, I won, and I went down there. And the whole thing is, everybody said this is a part-time job. And Dennis, you know me by now. I don't do anything part-time. So I kind of let my personal business, kind of flounder and not doing much of it anymore. But I'm concentrating pretty much 100% of my time in legislative actions, policies, and I'm learning every day. I still don't know everything after 2 years. I still don't know everything. And one of the things that I always said is it's important to know what you don't know. It's even more important to admit to people what you don't know. And that's how I'm able to learn and move quickly. So again, I'm very fortunate. I don't know how all of this is happening, but it gives me the ability to make policy for the betterment of the people of Arizona. And that is my goal. And however long I stay in the legislature, I'm going to continue to operate the same way.
Okay, well, very good. Yeah, so I mean, so you're in a fairly contested neighborhood in terms of how many people are trying to run for office?
Well, this is
Your
an
office?
extremely red district. It's very red. But you can't take anything for granted, right? We have candidate for the AZ Senate, Ken Bennett, my future seatmate in the House, Selena Bliss, and myself, the three Republicans running pretty much identically on the same platform, pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, border security, a better economic situation than what we have now. And so that's what we're running on, funding the police. And so we have three people from the other side. And interestingly, it just seems like I'm the only one being attacked, Dennis. I'm trying to figure this one out. But I'll let you make the judgment on that.
Okay, well, I mean, it's and you're right. I do know a little bit about LD1 from the people and culture there, and it is a about as red state as it gets in terms of the tenor of the place. And but I mean, it's interesting to me from the point. I mean, what really surprised me about you in particular is because like, look, we're both, we're both first generation immigrants, and I gotta say to myself, like, how the heck did Quang into the state of Arizona? And because we're both Asian, right? And I go, like, that's pretty interesting move from the point of view of how that part of Arizona is able to take you on your ideas as opposed to
Dennis, I have to tell you, Arizona adopted me. You know, I lived 29 years in California, in Southern California. Graduated from Long Beach State. Um, you know, worked corporate for 30 years, and you know, I was on a job transfer from Irvine to Phoenix, and I decided that Prescott Valley is going to be my home since 2004, and we still live in the same home since 2004. And our kids actually, you know, born in California, but went to kindergarten here, and Casey was in fourth grade when he got here. So we feel like we are more so Arizonans than Californians. And the state adopted me, and I have to tell you, um, 240,000 people in legislative district 1. It's rural, you know, cowboys, hunters, shooters, um, you know, growers, ranchers. And I am just so fortunate to be able to be selected by the people to represent them. So there has to be something about me that caused people to give it a try. And
Yeah.
I remember there were comments that, you know, this is cowboy country, primarily white. They may not be ready for somebody like an immigrant like you. And you know, that was obviously wrong.
Yeah.
I
Well,
didn't
clearly.
face any of that. And if I face any funny business when it comes to skin color, usually it comes from the one party. And I can cite many examples of you know, having the conservatives embracing me, and the liberal side, you know, sort of pitch me into this pigeonhole, and you know, I have to do certain things in order to, you know, as an artist, as a minority, I'm supposed to be follow certain protocol. And I is not supposed to be thinking for myself. And the conservative movements allow me to think for myself, and it embraces me. And so here I am talking to you.
Yeah, there you go. As the incumbent of your district. Yeah,
Right.
definitely. Hey, thoughts. What do you hope to work on next session? Should you be reelected?
Yeah, if I'm lucky enough to on November 9th to give you a call and say, hey, Dennis, I'm back in the saddle again. Um, you know, this is a national problem that we have, which is fentanyl. And my last time I did introduce a fentanyl bill to criminalize dealers who actually kill people with second degree murder charge and automatic, you know, 15 years. That didn't go well. I didn't get a single support from the other party. And so, you know, and I lost a couple of members here. And so I'm going to come back, work with the county attorney, revise the language a little bit, and hopefully to be able to bring back. If you recall last year, then there's 97,000 Americans killed by fentanyl. And here we are, we're looking at possibly 30 to 50% increase since last year. So I'm afraid to find out what 2022 will be, but I hope to be able to bring that back. And since we're on fentanyl, we have to talk about border security, because this is the number that I heard from law enforcement, is that 70% of the fentanyl that came into the United States came through the state of Arizona. So when you're talking about fentanyl in Arizona, it's not just in Arizona. They're being spread out throughout the, you know, the other 49 states. And so it's important for us to continue to think about border security. The legislature actually this past session appropriated $550 million for the closure and border security of the 18 to 22 miles on state land. And so I'm very proud to be a part of that. But we need to do a whole lot more, because it doesn't seem like this administration in DC is going to do anything to help us at all.
Well,
So
there
that's
you
my
go.
number one priority there.
Yeah, so interesting that you note that, you know, the border states, which Arizona is, are kind of on their own to try to solve a lot of these problems, because the it's the DC is not as helpful.
Right.
as
And real quickly, it became a crisis in blue states the minute we start busing the illegal aliens to their state, and all of a sudden it became a crisis. But when we live here as a border state, no, you have Kamala Harris continue to say the border is secure, but she has never visited the Arizona border. As a matter of fact, you could find her at the DMZ in Korea recently, if you recall that. Wrong
Yep.
border, right? Wrong border.
Border. Yeah, there you go. Hey, as we begin to finish up, you got a message for the people of Legislative District 1 as a candidate?
Yes, sir. Very simple. Just remember the gas price when you go to the pump. Just remember how difficult it is to put food on the table these days. Just remember that when you get a 3% raise, understand that inflation is around right about 9%. So when you go to the poll, make sure you remember who put you in the situation where you are today and how well you performed financially 2 years ago. And so I would ask for everybody to, vote for every Republican or vote out every Democrat you can imagine, because you are where you are today because of the lack of understanding of the economic situation. Yeah, you know what, Dennis, mean tweets or not, I kind of prefer the mean tweets over $6 gas, right? I was recently in California and it was nearly $7. So yeah, so my suggestion to the voters out there, especially the ones in Legislative District 1, Arizona, is that remember, whenever you go to the gas station, remember how we can help you.
There you go. All right. So how do people find you for and your campaign? Is there a website, phone numbers, whatever?
Yeah, the website is Quang for Arizona, QUANG Arizona.com. When you go there, you're going to see a set of policies and bills that actually signed into law. And I considered myself pretty successful as a freshman, having 6 out of 11 bill introduced, signed into law by Governor Ducey. And so I'm going to continue to work really hard for the people out there and make sure that we pass a sensible policy out there to make life better for everyone.
Well, there you go. Well, thank you, my friend. It is always good to talk to you, and good luck in the race.
Yes, sir. And we'll see you on the firing range.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.